between you and me, right where you are right in this moment, is exactly where you were meant to be. So, wherever that may be, just be.
To be a new you.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast.
Your permission slip to raise your standards and live an even more amazing life. Now, if you're feeling like that's way out of the ball game and you're really suffering with like pain in your body, guilt, shame, anxiety, depression, like these emotions run a lot of people's lives, and that's not by accident. Our culture is set up to keep us in those emotions because it's easier to control people when they're in those emotions. But if you're on an awakening journey and you have recognized that those are there, you have taken the most crucial step to get out of that, which is to become aware that it's actually happening. It's time to awaken, to bring all the parts of yourself back to this present moment and explore the joy that is your life when you live full out, fully expressed, fully harnessing the joygasmic potential of your body and yourself. Anything is possible, and especially we are here to tell you that deep and fulfilling love is possible and is available for you when you choose that for yourself.
Good morning, beautiful people. Good afternoon, good night as well. Welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. Today's guest is Sarah Schmid, who is a mom of 8, all born at home, the first with the help of midwives and the others all at home without. Her background is as a medical doctor, but she decided to become a stay-at-home mom and has since created her birth on the topic, Freebirth, Self-Directed Pregnancy and Birth. She has several of her births live on her YouTube channel, including a twin home birth, which I will be asking her more about today. And she writes particularly for the German audience, although she also has videos, like translations on all her videos and much of her website in English. So Sarah will be joining us shortly, and thank you so much for being here today. For those of you who are new to the Joygasmic Life podcast, this is season 3, Orgasmic Motherhood. The purpose of our podcast is to provide inspiration and actionable change to awakening mothers. This series is interviewing experts in orgasmic mindset, NLP, hypnosis, trance states, and bliss hormones, healthy eating, including intermittent fasting, vegan, plant-based, or nutrition coaches who specialize in women, birth, hormone rebalancing, and healing PCOS naturally. We also interview women who have specialties in feminine presence and alternative sexuality, how to have amazing sex life as a parent after a kid, sensual empowerment, and orgasmic birth coaches. Today's story is from a holistic health mama who has been doing it for at least the last 8 babies. And well, welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. My partner is a twin, and so it's always on my mind, like what will happen. And I'm really, really excited to talk with you today about your home birthing experiences, the work you do with women in supporting them to trust birth, and the Weston Price diet, how that plays into your family of 8, and I'm really excited to dive into that today. So welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for people who don't know you very well, I read your bio sort of before you came on, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, how did you get into helping support women with autonomous birth?
I started with my own birth. So with my first birth, I had a home birth, and it didn't go exactly as I had planned. So the midwife that I had hired was at another birth when the birth started, and her colleague came, and I didn't get well along with her, and labor stalled for a few hours, and it was really painful. And at some point, I noticed that the midwives, they don't know how the baby will come out. I have to give birth myself. And it was like an eye-opener to me. It's me that has to do it. And I was like, now the expert is in the room and they are gonna do this. And we'll see. And at some point it was like, they don't know what to do, and they're thinking about transferring to the hospital for a C-section and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, if I don't give birth here, then things go the way I don't want things to go. So at that moment, I realized, okay, I have to listen to my body and to my baby, and I have to get this baby out because otherwise I will have a C-section. And it worked. The baby was finally born at home, and finally also my midwife came, and yeah, we were all exhausted, but it was well in the end.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Afterwards, I thought a lot. I processed things and why did this happen like this, and my conclusion was that it's really important who is in the labor room, who is there, and how do I connect with them or not. So if there's somebody who is in fear or somebody who I don't like, then this can affect my labor a lot. So for the next, we moved to Sweden in the time in between when I was pregnant with my next baby. We were in Sweden. So in Sweden, there are hardly any midwives and any Homebirth at all. So I found one midwife that was 1 hour away, but then I was thinking like, if I don't get along with her, or if she doesn't make it to my birth, or what, and this and that. And so finally, I read a lot in the internet. At that time, there was only about Freebirth in America. So I read a lot of Freebirth on mothering.com. And I did a lot of research in all the risks and what people are afraid of, cord around the neck and stuff like that. And I decided to do it on my own. And I was thinking, if something goes wrong, I can still go to the hospital. So it was, and the birth went really well. And all the other births later I did in the same way, and they also went well. And I just learned that I can trust my body, and I can trust my feeling for things more than what other people say. And I think this is the basic for having an autonomous and good birth, where you're really satisfied with the result, and there's nothing, there's no pain or sting or anything where you think, oh, this was not the way I wanted it to be, and it could have been better this way. And it's just everything is the way you wanted it to be. And this is, it makes something with you when you accomplish something yourself like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, that's the story we hear from mothers over and over again who have had some sort of challenging birth. You know, your first one was a midwife challenged birth. You know, and I could really hear how the lack of connection, you know, your midwife, and then there was this other midwife who was part of the team who came, and it's like, oh my gosh, of course that's going to mess with the hormones and the flow. You've got a total stranger in your space, like, of course, like, you know, I talked to my husband, and he understands birth through poop. He's like, I can't poop with a stranger in the room staring at me. I'm like, I know, me neither. Like, so it's I think that's the easiest way to explain it to any like husband or you know, other human who just doesn't know. It's like, oh, like try and let your body relax all the way with a stranger staring at you going, are you done yet? Is it done? Is it ready? Is it time? What can I do to make it happen faster? Anything I can do to make it happen faster. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like what a challenging way to birth. And then, you know, it's beautiful to hear your stories of, oh, and the next one went well, and the next, you know, the next 7 after that went really well too. And yeah, wow, it's so wonderful to hear those stories. So I'd love to hear about your twin birth, because that's something that's really dear to me. I've also done lots of listening and reading on podcasts, but I've never actually, well, maybe until today, I've heard some stories about free birthing twins, but in the US at least, they tend to end with women still feeling anxious, worried, and going to the hospital. And I've looked through many of your videos and I was like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't think that was part of her experience. So and the video of you giving birth itself is like, my brain was like blown. Like I'll forever have that image of like your baby, like the first baby, like partway out, just be like, what the heck? Like I have a new normal, right? My normal has expanded to include that experience. So I'd love to hear, and thank you for being so vulnerable too. Like it's incredible to have you have shared those. But I'd love to hear about that experience and about the postpartum afterwards.
Yeah, it was my pregnancies. I did my own prenatal care, so I didn't go to the doctor or anything. So it was like when I was 23 weeks or so, I was like, something is different than the other times. And I started feeling, and it was like there was more than it couldn't just be one. It was more in there, but not always. So it seemed like they were hiding behind each other when they were smaller. So I have a midwife. There's a friend that's a midwife, and I asked her, "Do you feel two?" And she just felt one. So I was like, for 3 days, I was relieved and was okay. It's just one. But then I started feeling two again, and even more. So the bigger they got, the more often there were two. And finally, I also told my husband, and he also felt two heads, and so it was quite obvious that there were two. And we had one ultrasound to confirm that there were twins, and that was everything. The only time that I connected to the system, so to speak, to have my twins confirmed. And it took some time to let it suck. And I never wanted twins, so it was like twins is nice for the others, but I like one after the other, because it's still a lot of work with one, and having two, oh my god. So still it was and I started especially reading about specialties in twin birth, and I interviewed my midwife. So my midwife friend, I didn't have checks with her, but I just asked her about her experience with twin birth, and she had a few home births that she had been at, so she knew a little bit. And I asked others, and I did my research as I usually do.
Yeah.
And so I felt well prepared. I knew which things I had to look after, especially when the first one is born and the second still in, that the second one will be fine and coming out too without problems. And yeah, and it still felt the best way to birth, especially with twins, to be at home and in my space and my own boss. Because I have never been to the maternity ward here in this town, because we moved from Sweden to France. And when I'm pregnant, I like to check out the facilities. And so it was a good possibility to. And so I asked about twin birth and what they do. And yeah, I could have even birthed in the tap or in the water, but I would have to have a certain medication. So after twin one is born, they want to give medication to start contractions and stuff like that. And it didn't. So many people and midwives and doctors and so are going to be around, and it was like no. It doesn't sound like the birth that I picture. So I prepared everything at home. I need to be the boss, but I don't mind so much other people around, as long as I'm the boss and I can do my birth as I wanted to do. And so I had two friends that came over to take pictures and to film. Yeah, and then it was like every other birth, except it was easier. So somehow I skipped this stage where just before pushing, where you feel like you can't take it anymore and it's just too much. I just skipped that. So it was easier than the single birth I had. I think because they were smaller or so. So
Mm.
when one came out, the cord was really short. So
Mhm.
I didn't really expect that, but I had everything there. So we cut the cord. I forgot to clamp it, but anyway, he lost some blood. And then, yeah, nine minutes later, the second baby was born. So it was really fast. So the one baby was out, and then contraction started again, and second baby was out, and everything was fine. Then I marveled at my babies, and then just the placenta fell to the ground, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible video, and it's really interesting. Like, I just want to touch base on that, the cutting the cord on the first twin, because it's like there's so much sort of drama in the, or for me at least, in the like autonomous birthing world. Like, you have to delay the cord clamping, you have to do it in a specific way, you have to do this, you have to do that. If you do it that way, it's wrong, you're bad, blah blah blah. It's not. And like, there's obviously, benefits of delayed cord clamping and letting that do its thing, but it's like, in the moment, like, the mother will know what the best thing to do was. And in the video you can really see, like, the cord is so short, you can't really hold the baby to your breast. You've got another baby coming out, that, like, you can't really be holding the baby while you're doing that. It's just like, oh, this is the next thing that needs to happen. And for me, it was really helpful, because I had imagined, like, oh, you need to tie it and like clamp it and cut it, otherwise it's like spurting blood across the room or something. And it's like, no, not at all. Like, it was so good for me to see the, like, oh, like, she just cut it, and then the baby's there, like, and it's fine, and she's like got another baby to come out, and she's fine. It's like, oh, like, it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was some blood coming out. I was actually I thought the blood was the blood flow had still had already ceased, because it looked white to me, but obviously
Yeah.
it was because it was so stretched, because it was so
Mm.
short, it was so stretched that it looked white, but there still came some blood out. But yeah, it was not so much, so it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but I so appreciate your philosophy, like, there, and in, you did a response video to that as well, just being like, people asked me about it. It's like, it happened, it's done. Like, I can't undo it. That's how it went.
Right,
And it's
right,
like, you know, it's like, maybe if you had twins again, you might do it differently. But in that moment, that's what happened, and that's it. Like,
right, right.
you
Right.
can't change it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So tell me about.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about sort of those first couple days afterwards. Like, I remember seeing, like, twin one was sort of twin two, I remember, was like, seemed like more rolly and like covered, like all white and covered. And there is this conversation, like, I've heard some stories, like twin two comes out like purple, like a totally different color. There's something about like the blood flow between the two of them, something like that. Did you experience any of that, or like, what was your first week like postpartum with the babies, other than a lot of sleeping and nursing and pooping?
Well, the second one, she was we didn't wrap her up really warm, so she got a little too cold, and so I took some time to warm her up again. So I didn't miss that somehow, because everything was yeah. But yeah, it was in the evening, and everybody went to bed, and only me and my oldest, we were sitting there and looking at the babies, and I ate something. I was hungry, and yeah, then I went to bed with both of them, and it was, yeah, it was unusual to have two babies at my breasts.
Yeah.
I have never breastfed two babies at the same time. I mean, I've breastfed a little baby and a bigger child, something like that,
Mhm.
but never two babies same size. And this was really funny. And I tried to find a way to breastfeed comfortably, laying down, and two babies. So in the beginning, I used to swaddle them, and so I just lay on the side and I stacked them one above the other, and then I had them here, because laying on your back doesn't work well breastfeeding, and I wanted to lay down and not sit up, so I stacked them, and it was funny.
Just like, imagine like two like
Yes,
sausages
yes,
just sitting there next
yes,
with your.
yeah, it worked quite well. So I put the one with more weight on the lower lower level, and the one with little weight on the upper level, and yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Is there anything that you wish you had known going into that birth, or your 7th and 8th babies, so you wish you had known that you know now?
No, I don't think so. So
Yeah,
she the second twin, she has a special genetic, what do you call it? Um, yeah, defect doesn't sound nice, but there's something with her genes, something small, some it doesn't affect life much, but it makes that just after birth she got blisters all over her arms and legs, and I was like, what's that? But she looked fine to me, and she was nursing well and gaining weight and everything, but it was like, I have never seen that. And I searched the internet for what could this be, for all kinds of what you can have on a newborn skin, but I didn't really find exactly this. And later I noticed that her teeth were really small, her primary teeth. And when I researched the teeth, I found the skin again, this special skin things. So it's a genetic defect that makes these skin blisters in the newborn period, and it makes small teeth. And sometimes it can affect the eyes and the brain, but usually it's just the teeth and the skin. So, but I'm really glad I didn't know that, and I'm glad I wasn't at the hospital, because I read other stories about babies that have this condition, and usually the doctors don't know what this is, and they check the baby for everything. They give antibiotics just in case, and all this, and they don't let the mother home because they haven't checked out what this is. So I'm really glad I didn't know all of this, and I'm really glad no doctor was around to say, no, you can't go home because we don't know what the baby has. I just observed my baby. My baby was fine except for these strange blisters, and yeah. And this was something new to me, and it's quite a rare condition actually. So I learned something on the way.
And is it related to twins at all, or is it just something that happens with babies? Yeah.
It's not related to twins. It just happens sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but that's a really great story to hear, because I know from the stories that I've listened to about twin home births, free births, it's like there's often this like, it's like something in the field of twins, or something in the just like the psyches of new moms who are birthing, that it's like, oh, like there's something wrong, we need to go get it checked out. And what you did is like, oh, like I'll do some research, I'll do some reading, I'll do some looking, I'll see if I can find anything that says, oh yeah, definitely it's this, and it needs maybe medical attention. You didn't find anything specific. You primarily checked in with your baby. Is my baby nursing? Is she pooping and peeing? Does she look healthy? Is she alert and active, as babies are? She's sleeping. And it's like, oh, great. Like all of those things are in place. Then she's fine. Some skin stuff, like don't worry about it too much. And like you said, there's nothing that the doctors are necessarily going to do other than pump her full of antibiotics, keep you away from her, right? Put her in a NICU, put her like some of the stories I've heard there are just like, whoa, not pretty. And some of them really scary and really traumatizing, and really like cause challenges for mother baby bonding and connection afterwards, and so many things. So it's really inspiring for me, and I hope for others that you had a bit of a challenge there. Maybe you could have, if you hadn't been maybe on your 7th, 8th baby, maybe you might have made a different decision. But because of how much you like researching, and the fact that you had already decided to sort of step away from that Western medical support, it seemed like a really natural choice for you to just stay home with them and enjoy that.
Yeah. I always weigh the two options. Do I just observe, or do I really need medical care here? And as long as the baby is breathing and eating and pooing and everything, then because the medical option, it comes always with costs, and yeah, you just said it. So I really weigh these things carefully.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's really important to talk about that. Like I made that same mistake with my first son, in the first, maybe he was 15 or 16 days old, and he had like some sort of blister infection on his finger, and I got scared and I took him to the hospital, and that resulted in 15 days in the hospital with him getting pumped full of antibiotics and stuff like that. And it's like he only had a fever for the 30 seconds that they were actually taking his fever. He didn't have a fever the rest of the time, but the protocol says he's got a fever, we put him in the hospital, we send her to the children's hospital, we pump him full of anything until he stabilizes. But he was stable that entire time. And I didn't know, like, this is 10 years ago. I didn't know. I hadn't even started on my holistic health journey. So it's like there's a lot of sort of forgiveness and graciousness with myself in like just not knowing better at the time. But it's like, oh my God, if I had known better, like, I wouldn't interesting, like, he's got some sort of infection on his finger. He'll survive, he'll be okay with that. We'll see what happens, and just sort of trusting that the body has the capacity to heal. Breast milk is amazing, you can use it on anything. Like there's so much that we can do, and so much worrying and anxiety that doesn't need to happen through that Western medical, and harm also that can come, like we said, to the bonding and whatnot. So
yeah, and as a mother, you know your baby much better than any doctor. They only did their checks to know if the baby's fine or not. And as a mother, you just know because you know your baby. So it's much less traumatizing for a baby to get checked by the mother compared to checked by the doctors, because they will put needles in it and do in him and do all kinds of stuff. And as a mother, you just hold your baby, you look at it, and it's fine. And yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to like really having that grounded sense of like, oh, I know, like you know that the baby's fine. I feel like a lot of women are disconnected from the sense of intuition, mother's intuition. Was that something you had to learn and grow, or was that something you just had from inside of you?
I think I learned this even before I had babies. I learned it with myself, that I can trust my own instincts better than what the doctors say, because I was quite sick for quite a long time with sinusitis.
Okay.
And I got all kinds of antibiotics and stuff, and it didn't help. I was sick for a year or so, and they didn't have a solution for me. And but then I improved my diet. I quit sugar, and these things just disappeared by quitting sugar. So the doctors never came to this solution. So, and there were many other things where I went with a doctor, and it didn't work, or I was disappointed with the result. And when I decided to go after what I felt was right, then it went well. So I had a lot of experiences like this, and so I had more and more I trusted my instincts and went after my instincts, the more I saw that the other way doesn't go well. So that's what so even before I had babies, I felt like, yeah. And when I had my first baby, she was just 1 month when we moved to Sweden, and it was just too stressful. So I was quite sick, and I went to the doctor, and they prescribed antibiotics. Ta-da! It's solution for everything. And my baby got diarrhea, and she wasn't well with her stomach, and later she developed allergies. And so this was the last time that I took antibiotics and trusted the medical system. And later I thought, no, antibiotics are a bad solution, a really bad solution, because they destroy your microbiome and even your babies, and especially babies, they are just so small and building up their microbiome. And when you disturb it, then you can ruin their health for the rest of their lives if you are not lucky. So yeah, she's still allergic, and all the problems that come with it. So yeah, it just costs you when you don't trust and follow your your gut feeling in things. And I've paid quite a lot, so it was enough at some point. So now I only trust my gut feeling.
I mean, I totally get that. I talk pretty openly about my mental health journey recovery, and it's like the hardest year of that recovery was the year that I went, I don't know what to do next. Let's see what Western medical has to say. And it was like, oh, it says I should wait on a waiting list for 8 months and then talk to some lady who like doesn't really care about me. It's like, oh, like, oh, like that's not a solution. It made me so glad that I had taken it into my own hands and I'd done so much research and so much alternative stuff and so much mind work and so much diet work. And it's just like, I tried talking to somebody about microbiome, the psychologist, like, hey, have you read about any of these papers? And he's just like, huh? Like, what? Like, just has no, I'm sorry, sir, but like your degree is like 25 years out of date. Like people have been talking about and researching this for like ages. And it's just, you know, I mean, and there are like specialists out there who are like functional medicine doctors, traditional Chinese practitioners, like all sorts of practitioners who are keeping up to date, who are like pushing that sort of the science. Like Weston Price is a great example, and we can dive into that more soon. But like there are doctors who are doing good work, but the conventional Western medicine is just like like you want to feel ignored and unimportant and like a number in a queue. Like that's not a recipe for healing. Recipe for healing is like caring, connection, you know, humanity, referencing and like returning to that gut feeling, like somebody who can empower you to like trust your own wisdom, not their wisdom. It's like, you know, you and I have experience, whatever that might be, but if it differs from the gut wisdom of whoever's listening to this, like they should trust their gut, not us, you know. And it's really yeah, it's absolutely important.
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like we had a little bit of lag there. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. So you're working with women and supporting, like I look through your website now and like thank God for Google Translate, I was able to read chunks of it. Um so so you're I know, I was like, my German is terrible. Uh so you're working with women to help them reestablish this sense of connection with themselves. What does that work look like when you have people who are asking questions? You're obviously writing and blogging and videoing a lot, and what does that work look like?
Yeah, I have quite a lot of groups on Facebook and on Telegram, and so women just, especially when they want to have autonomous birth, or teas are also a topic. When they have questions, they just write me, and we try to figure out how they can proceed best, or they just want to know my opinion, and then I tell them what I know and what I think. And I have these groups where we discuss all stuff, everything about what the group is about. I mean, if it's free birth, or if it's teas, or if it's traditional cooking, or baby care, or whatever. So that's mostly it. And especially in free birth, we have a group to support women in birth when they want to have a free birth and they have questions during the birth and they don't have anybody to ask. Then they can ask in the group, is this okay, it's so and so, and what can I else do to speed up labor or whatever. So yeah, that's basically. Yeah. And it's really, I think it's quite important, because many of these women, they are just left alone. They're just left alone by the system, because the system, it doesn't support anybody that wants things different. And if you want things different, then you're just left alone. And we try to catch this up a little bit and to support these women that are just left alone by the system.
Yeah, I mean, by the system, and also often by their families as well. Like I'm just getting into supporting this kind of birth as well, and it's like, oh, like your mother says no, the way you're doing it is not good, not okay, scares her too much. You know, her mom's like trauma around her own deliveries and birth is like right up there at the surface, and it feels too scary to really offer that support if they're not doing their own self-education. It's like, you know, the women who are choosing this kind of birth have really educated themselves around the safety of birth, have really worked on their minds a lot of the time, and so it can be really challenging, you know, being left alone, not only by the medical system, which is sort of like the go-to authority for a lot of people, but also by their family systems. And it's really sad. So I'm really glad to hear that you're doing that work. And is that primarily in sort of like the German language scape, or is it multinational?
So most of my groups are German speaking. I also have an English speaking group, but it's not so active. So it's mostly the German area. Yeah, and in Germany, it's so that the midwives, if you want to have a home birth midwife, it's not easy, because the home birth midwives in some areas, there is no home birth midwife, or they are not allowed to attend a birth after C-section, when you have diabetes, or when you have twins, of course, is forbidden. So the midwives, they are hardly allowed anything anymore. So the women are just left alone, even when they want a different birth than in the hospital. So it's really frustrating. I mean, many want a midwife, but they don't find a midwife because they are so restricted.
Right. Yeah, and you have a fabulous like resource list on your site about like free birth doulas, women who are open to supporting that. I just feel so warm and happy to know, because obviously my journey's been like centered around the English speaking language sphere of free birth, because that's my primary language. But it was so like nourishing this morning to be like, oh, like there's a whole German section of women who are also feeling this revolution, who are also like, birth is ours, we're taking it back, you know, and supporting that, like so many beautiful women who are supporting that. And it's like, oh, thank goodness, like it's not just like crazy Americans or like crazy Canadians who are doing this. It's like, oh, like the rest of women around the rest of the world are also into this. It's not just sort of like, I don't know, I think about crazy Americans and their like extremism sometimes. It's like, no, it's actually not extreme. It's just the way birth is meant to be.
But I think it started in America, because 12 years ago, when I prepared my first free birth, there was almost nothing in German. There was a little Yahoo group, but not very active, and that was it. So at that time I did my research in America, but now things have changed a lot.
Yeah, it's growing. And I think with COVID, what's happening, a lot more people, you know, who are maybe on the fence or willing to follow the default paradigm, are like, whoa, like, no, thank you to that default paradigm. Like, I gotta do something else. So I think there's gonna be a lot more, sort of like a lot more expansion in this next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, in the hospitals here, often the women have to wear a mask during the birth, and they have to get tested for with this silly test, and the baby has to get. It's really, and the partner cannot be there, so it's the best entrance to obstetric violence, because the woman is just alone with this bunch of strangers that can do anything to her, and it's. Yeah, but it helps women to think new, and to think about, how do I want to birth? Do I really want to birth in this system or not? So it's good in a way.
Yeah, it's good in a way for sure. Oh, yeah. Would you like to dive into talking a little bit about the teeth stuff? That's a really fascinating. I read this morning. I was doing some reading about you, but it's like, oh, I read that like you also have a unique point of view on like teeth and teeth care and your children, and you know, I remember for myself, like I didn't brush my son's teeth until he was maybe 3, just because I was exhausted. I was a single mom. I had postpartum depression. I just couldn't find the like will to like engage in that battle of wills with him. Like I was like, I'm not gonna like I mean, I remember like being like, you want to do the easy way, hard way, you know? And it's like the easy way is like, I'm holding him down anyways, and like brushing his teeth. And the hard way, he's like kicking and screaming. And we defined it as that. And like, that was his like, you know, from 4 onwards, this was how we were doing his teeth brushing. And it's like, oh, at some point, like I again moved into like less energy and was just like, do I want to do this? Do I really want to do this? It's like, no. And I've seen like why would I want to, you know, I'm so much about kind parenting and loving mothering, and yet here I am doing this like torture activity to my child. Like what exactly is happening? And yet obviously like there's a huge problem with cavities in children, with issues with that. And so, you know, to say, oh, we don't brush our teeth, feel like has this feeling of maybe negligence or like I'm bad or something like that. So I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because I did a little bit of reading and I know you have wonderful thoughts to share about this.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I had just a lot of tooth decay. And every time at the dentist, it was like, you're not brushing well enough. And my brother, he never had tooth decay. And it was like, oh, how fine you're brushing your teeth. But in reality, it was just the other way around. I was brushing my teeth like crazy because I didn't want to get more cavities. And my brother was like, oh, brushing teeth, done. And I was just like, it doesn't go together. There's something that they are missing, because I am brushing my teeth. So it's just, I don't want to be accused of doing something that I'm not doing. And it was like, I have to research more. It was like this, there's something missing. And that's what I started with. But then they said, you just have bad teeth and they just decay easily. This was the last explanation that they came up with. And I was like, okay, maybe I just have bad teeth, and one day I will have just no teeth anymore. And yeah, this was the solution, the end of the solution that the system could give me.
Mm-hmm.
And I accepted it for a few years. And each time I went to the dentist, there was a new hole and a new drilling and filling and everything. And when I had my first baby, I thought, okay, she's not gonna have tooth decay. I'm gonna do everything that she won't have tooth decay. So I brushed her teeth from the first tooth, and she didn't get any sugar. And what did happen? She got tooth decay. And I was like, wait a minute, something is really missing here. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, and she's still having tooth decay. Something's not adding up. So I started researching, and I found Weston Price.
Mm-hmm.
And this book, Cure Tooth Decay by Ramil Nagel. Yeah, and then I knew, okay, there's more to it. I knew it. Somehow I've always known this. Yeah, and we implemented the diet as good as possible. It took a while for me just to wrap my head around that oatmeal was not the best solution.
Why is oatmeal not the best solution? I don't know if I want to know this or not. You know, it's like once I know, I have to change my behavior. But like, tell me, why is oatmeal not the best solution?
So my whole life, I had oatmeal for breakfast. And when I started getting healthier, after I had quit sugar, I decided maybe it's more healthy to take the raw oats and just crush it freshly and prepare it just fresh and raw. And that's what I did for a year. And after a year, without eating any sugar and just these raw oats, I had such big holes in my teeth as never before. And I was like, what? It was before I found Weston Price, because the oat in there. It's because the grains have substances in them that take the minerals and bind them, and you can't take them up. You can't digest them. And at the same time, grains, they have other substances that inhibit digestive enzymes. So it's not a good idea to eat it raw. And traditionally, it was prepared. It was soaked and sprouted and cooked or baked or something like that. And as long as you eat the oats from the store, it's already heated. It's heat treated to preserve it longer, because the fat will not get rancid. But when you take the raw grains, then you have such a tooth decay bomb. And I didn't know that. And it took a while to wrap my head around this truth. And I didn't want to quit my oats in the first, in the beginning. But after a while, I was thinking, and I dived into oatmeal preparation, the traditional way, and how to get the anti nutritions out there. And but finally, I decided, no, it's too complicated. I'm just gonna quit it. So and I had this X-ray from the dentist where you could see all my nice holes, and then I started the diet, and I said, I thought, okay, I'm gonna see how this works and if this works. So after 9 months, I got another X-ray, and you couldn't see any difference. So the holes, they had halted, so nothing had grown bigger. So I thought, okay, it seems to work, and that's how I went on. I noticed also that when you're pregnant a lot, then you need a lot nutrition. So I had 2 babies spaced quite close together, and in this time my holes grew a little bit bigger. So I took an X-ray later again, and so you could see a little bit a difference there. So I could tell that I was not when I was pregnant with the second baby so close after the other, that my storage of nutrition was quite low. Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, I kept my holds to just check how this is going. So I don't have pain, and it doesn't bother me because they are not this large. They are not small, but they are still covered with the dentine. No, it's not the dentine. It's the animal that's around it, and the holes in the dentine. So it doesn't, food doesn't get stuck. It's just seen on the X-ray. So it doesn't bother me. And from time to time, I have it checked to see how it is doing. And yeah, it's my experimental teeth.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much anecdotal stories about women who really have, like, they've bleeding gums during pregnancy, or they have, tooth decay after babies. And I think it's really important to understand that that's literally because our bodies are stripping essential nutrients from our bodies to put into the placenta and the baby. It's like, that's the same reason we get this, like, mom brain. Nobody can think or remember things. It's like all the omegas are like whoop, into the baby's brain. They talk about the brain shrinking 5%. It's like 5% of my brain went into the baby. Like, are you kidding me? It's like 8 babies later, like, you really need to have a plan to manage that, or you start getting worse health outcomes with your babies. You start getting worse health outcomes with yourself, right? And if people are eating like modern standard American diet, fast food, colas, like soft drinks and hamburgers and candy like crazy, like, it's like, well, no wonder people are so ill and so challenged in their health. And then it's interesting because you mentioned this thing about the oats, and it's like, oh, I also love oatmeal, and I've been woken up to this. I think it's phytic acid is the term, or like something like that. That and it literally, like, attracts, it's the thing in the plant that, like, attracts and holds the nutrients, and when you sprout it, it sort of like cracks that, like, washes that off and cracks it open, and then the seed starts to actually produce more of those nutrients and be more nutritious. And it's like, oh yeah, in a traditional setting, you store the grain, you dry the grain, and then when you're ready to eat it, you soak it so that it's not so hard and just like miserable to eat, right? You soak it, it starts sprouting, and then you turn it into something. And a lot of work. It is not a small undertaking to do this, to like make your own, like, we do waffles, but like I soak and sprout all the seeds and all the nuts and stuff that go in there. And it's just like, it's a daily chore. And especially if you've got multiple, like, many children, it's a lot of work. And it's less work maybe if you're living in community, if you're living in a traditional village setting, if you've got lots of mamas to help with the work. But how many people are really living in that? And it's like, not so many. And so if you're looking at these grains, like, even if they're, really great grains like quinoa, amaranth, millet, buckwheat, oats, all of those are, they say they're like high in nutrition. But if you're not doing that soaking process, they really are acting as anti-nutrients and pulling nutrition from your body. And it's just like, Oh my God. Like that is a
Mhm.
travesty that people don't know this, and that they're sort of like trying to do good things for their body and really actually doing the opposite. Oh, now I've got to get more clear about my food stuff. I got to go through my pantry and be like, where am I busting this? Where am I not doing it? And it's challenging to make those changes, like you said, like getting on this like Western priced diet and doing that. It's like it's a challenging undertaking to make those shifts, but we
Oh
really,
yes.
especially as mothers, it's like looking at like what are the long-term health outcomes for our babies, for our children.
Mhm.
If we're looking at like lack of nutrients, like I've studied Dr. Patrick Holford's work pretty extensively in terms of like optimum nutrition, and I've really benefited from that work. And it's like if we're looking at like the majority of disease and illness comes from like malnutrition, like a huge chunk of it comes from
Mhm.
malnutrition, which comes from, again, that western diet and the food. I mean, don't even get me started on food additives. I've got so much to say about that, but like there's there's this there's this thing, and it's like we really, really, like, if we're creating a healthy container for them, for our babies, that starts with a healthy container for our bodies. It starts with a healthy container for for those children moving forward, and we shape that through food and culture. And predominantly that food and culture has been stripped from most sort of Western developed cultures. That traditional food preparation, the fermented foods, the Scandinavian countries have this like fermented fish that, like, I've heard stories of, that just like rattles my brain to even think about. But if you were
Oh
raised with that as a food that
yeah.
was presented as a yummy thing, then it seems yummy. It's the only option you have. You're going to eat it because you're hungry, right? And we've really moved away from traditional foods that are delicious to sort of really dangerous. I mean, they taste good, but all those candies and pops, they're not good. You laughed so hard when I talked about this fermented fish. You must have a personal experience with it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, we lived in Sweden for 6.5 years, and one day some Swede brought this surströmming, this fermented fish, and we tried it, and it really smells like old poop and pee. So like, wow, it was so disgusting. I'm just to smell it. They used to open it underwater so that it doesn't stink too much. Oh.
Oh my God. But this is traditional food. Like,
Yeah.
this is fish that you caught when the water was still running, and you stuck it in something like oil or salt water so that it would still be there in January, February, when everybody's really hungry, because there's no
Right.
fresh greens and your grain stores are going down and blah blah blah. Like, this is how people survived to live where we are now.
Yeah.
It's like they just ate the things. And if your mom says, this is what we have for dinner today, you eat it.
Yeah.
If there's nothing
And
else, or you go hungry.
yeah, but
Go ahead.
but you even, if you grow up with it, you even like it. I mean, I started taking this fermented cod liver oil because
Yeah.
it's recommended, and yeah, and I don't like it actually. But when I was pregnant and I took this cod liver oil, the kids that were born while I was taking the cod liver oil in the pregnancy, they love it. They like to eat it. And I had a woman from Russia, and she said, oh, it tastes like the fish that I had when I was a kid, and she liked it. So it's there's so much that's already starting when the baby's in the womb, that's making a lifelong mm, impression on,
Impact.
on taste and how you perceive food. So it was really interesting. So my babies, they loved
That's
the
it.
cod liver oil so much that I had it in the kitchen, in the somewhere in the storage. But she found out where it was, and one day I came into the kitchen and there was this broken bottle on the ground, and she was full with cod liver oil and with a finger in her mouth and like,
Yeah.
and I
And
was just
fish oils are not known for their like deliciousness generally, you know. It's like not usually something, but we, you know, I hear stories of this, like, oh, like you got to take your cod liver oil, you got to take your, you know, like that's a old food, and it's like, yeah, because it's good for our brains, because we need those omegas, because, you know. And that's so funny. Your baby just like, well, give me the cod, give me the oils. And I see my son do that too with like some of those really nutrient dense foods. Like we brought in more seaweed, and I was like, I never thought he would like seaweed, but his body knows. His body goes, oh my God, I need the like greens in this. I need the like the micronutrients that seaweed has. I'm like, that's why I brought it into the house, kiddo. Like, eat it up. And so it's really good to see that, and see them like liking these foods, and when we share with them, it's really important. Yeah, we set their foundation for their lives.
Yeah, and it costs it. I have paid so much for starting with a bad health. So when I started researching Western Price, it was not before my third. I was pregnant with my third child, or after, or in the pregnancy, or shortly after.
Yeah.
But before, I quit the sugar after baby 2. And baby 1 and 2, they are both complicated. So the first one has a kind of autism, and the second has ADHD. And I thought maybe with a traditional diet it will be better, but it wasn't. So for years, I came across the GAPS diet. I don't know if you have heard or read about the GAPS diet.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we will need this, but it's too hard to do. And for years I went around it and was I can't do it. It's too much. It's too much. But finally, we found out that our second, the one with ADHD, he also has big cavities in his permanent teeth, despite all my effort. And this was the last drop that was needed to fill the cup and to decide, okay, we're gonna go on GAPS now. Because so now we've been on GAPS for 3 weeks, and it's such a change. I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it. My expectations were really low because I have tried a lot of other things. But our ADHD boy, he is so calm now. It's really, also my husband noticed it, and other people. He's just like a normal boy now most of the time. And it creates a whole different atmosphere in the whole house, because otherwise when he was around, it was always fighting and strife and nasty words, and it was always not a nice atmosphere. And suddenly it's like he still comes up with some, but it's way much better. And just after a few weeks, and I mean, I didn't stick to it really perfectly. I used store-bought sausages where there was still a little sugar in there, but yeah, otherwise I tried to stick to the program as well as possible. But it's really changed, and my husband is excited that it's working so well, because he was the hardest to convince. I would have done it earlier, but he was like, no, it's gonna be so, the kids won't like it, and it's gonna be so hard and awful, and in these times we need to have something that's pleasure. But when we found out about his tooth decay, then it was in a sense it was good. So I was allowed to do it, and now he noticed. He says himself that he's really he can't believe it how much of a change we have.
That's incredible. I love to hear those stories. Yeah, the GAPS work was really important for me in terms of just understanding that connection. Like, I had ear infections as a young child, like chronic ear infections, and then sort of mental health challenges starting from like 10 onwards, 10 until I was 27 or something, and then like really got serious about healing my body, and was like, oh my God, if my mom had known and done this, like, wow, how incredible that would have been in terms of changing our lives. So it's really good to hear that you're having this sort of shift and success. And And so, you know, you made changes in terms of like taking sugar out and getting on the Weston Price diet between, you said, sort of kid 3 and 4, somewhere in there. So what did you notice, you know, in the difference between your sort of first children and your later children after you'd taken that, made that change yourself and for your family?
Yeah, though, so they don't have ADHD or any behavioral issues. They are just normal kids. And my pregnancies were easier. I didn't have these problems with symphysis, or I don't know what it's called in English.
Like lower back pain or
These joint
sciatica?
problems in the pelvis.
Yeah.
And I didn't have heartburn, or what did I have? Yeah, I just enjoyed my pregnancies more because I didn't have these all these kind of different small complaints that I had with my especially second and third. And my third one was the pregnancy where I ate this oatmeal, this raw oats, and his midface is really too small, underdeveloped, and he is 11, no 10. He's 10 now, and he still has problems breathing through his nose because the nose is so small. And we got him such an appliance that extends the upper jaw, because when you can't breathe through your nose, then the tongue is not up in your roof, then your upper jaw will not develop properly. It will be too small, and then your lower jaw doesn't fit under the upper jaw. Then you develop TMG problems, and you clench your teeth at night. You get pain and tensions in your neck and even in your spine. So it's just a huge bunch of problems that's following just because you can't breathe through your nose. So I'm still like, what have I done to him? And the other kids, they don't have the problem. Just my first one, she's allergic. She has the same problem. She can't breathe through her nose. Her teeth are really narrow. She's clenching her teeth, and it's really frustrating. And that's also the reason why I have the braces, because I also couldn't breathe through my nose when I was a child, and my upper jaw was developed too small, and I started clenching at night. And especially when you're pregnant or in the breastfeeding period, when all these hormones are surging, then these things tend to get worse. And from pregnancy to pregnancy, it got worse that my teeth, my gums started bleeding on one side, and I clenched my teeth a lot at night, and I woke up tense my whole back, and it was really awful. There was one of my wisdom teeth that had a big cavity, and it had halted, but it was really the tooth had gotten quite frail from the big hole in it. So after it was a few days or weeks into having my 5th baby that I woke up at night clenching so much that I crushed this tooth, because I was clenching on this tooth, and the pain shot through my yeah, it was a different feeling. So I had to, yeah. And I had to get rid of this clenching, and you can just stop it when the lower jaw can come into a relaxed position, and it has to come forward. But when your upper jaw is too small and too much way back, your lower jaw can't come forward, and it will find some position, but it has to use the muscles to pull it there, and then you have a higher muscle tone already. And then if you add some stress and some hormones when being pregnant or breastfeeding, then you just have a big problem. So I started with this orthodontic treatment, and quite immediately my chewing muscles, they were quite large. They started disappearing, so to speak. So my face changed because the clenching stopped. And but it's an expensive treatment, and I don't want my kids to having to go through this. It's much better if you develop well from the beginning, if you can breathe through your nose and everything is just working fine, because then all these problems, you just don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a huge part, probably for you, but for me definitely is like why the the birth and conception and like that whole process is so important. It's like, of all the things on the planet I could be talking about, like this is the one that I want to talk about the most, because if we set that blueprint right, if we give the mom like proper nourishment, if we like, you know, set the baby up with a healthy microbiome, we avoid all that antibiotic crap, we avoid all those like interventions, all that trauma that happens in that first phases of birth, like we avoid all of those things, we're really setting our children up for such a different experience of life, such a different
Right.
experience in terms of their health, their long-term health. And it, you know, I don't know how I could say it like over and over and over again every day, like how important that first year of our life is, the womb year of the life. Not, I mean, the year afterward is important as well, but that womb year is
Yeah.
like so important.
Yeah.
And you
And
get into
I
like
mean,
some of the limbic. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and I mean, I studied I studied medicine. So when I after school I became medical started to, I became a medical doctor, and I thought now I know everything. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything of this stuff. Nobody taught me anything about microbiome, about how important it is to breathe through your nose, how this can affect your everything. I mean, if you go to a doctor, they have no clue. I went to so many doctors to figure out what's the problem with my teeth. Why are my gums always red and swollen on this side? And nobody could tell me. They just, maybe it's this and that, but it wasn't this and that. I had to figure it out myself. So I was thinking, what are these doctors for? What did I really learn? I didn't learn much. It's a waste of time if you look at it from this perspective, because what's really important to stay healthy, they won't tell you.
No. Do you want to get into that a little bit? Do you want to dive a
If you
little bit
like
deeper
to,
down that rabbit hole?
yeah, if you like to.
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to hear. Like, I have lots of thoughts on it, but I'm always really interested to hear it, especially from, you know, somebody who's sort of been through that Western medical training and then decided, you know, that it wasn't working. So I'd love to give you space to share more about that. Thank you so much for listening to today's interview with me. There is so much more waiting for you. If you would like to access the bonus exclusive membership content, which includes the finale of this interview and some really exciting exercises, then please head over to bulletproofmoms.com/member, which will allow you to access not only the end of this interview, but also the video format, which has some really interesting visuals that don't make it through the processing in the audio, as well as the end of this interview, as well as bonus meditations, brain training tracks, and access to our online school, which includes courses like Relationship Reset, Circles of Commitment, How to Save Your Relationship and How to Save Your Marriage, How to Make Intelligent Decisions as a Single Mom When You Begin Dating Again, and many other courses, including the Joygasmic Birth course, your complete guide to creating a joyful, ecstatic, pain-free and pleasurable birth. And you will also get to see the really silly dance that my son is doing in the background of me talking in this video. So I absolutely encourage you to join the membership. It is pay what you want, and there is a wide range of payment options available. So if you are on a limited income, absolutely do not think that cash is a barrier to your ability. I'm sorry, I'm barely being able to keep it together because my son is just doing the silliest dance, and it's totally worth it to upgrade just to see how ridiculous he is. I absolutely love you guys, and I'm so grateful to be able to make this content available for free. And thank you so much to everyone who is already subscribed as a member and who allows me to continue doing this wonderful work and being of service to you all in this way. Thank you so much for your support. And the credit song from the beginning of the podcast is from a beautiful friend of mine who I met in La Cruz de Guanajuato. Well, La Cruz de Guanajuato. La Cruz de... How does it go again?
Mom, it's La Cruz de Guanacaxli.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that one.
Oh my gosh. I used to think of it as La Cruz de Guanacaxle, but that's not how you pronounce it. It's really a terrible pronunciation. La Cruz for short, which is near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and he's an absolutely incredible musical artist, so please go check out Sonny, Sonny, and his work on Spotify. There's also links to that in the show notes. So again, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the membership. Alex, you want to say anything before we go? Oh yeah. It's important to be silly, and you can claim your silly back. We've got classes coming out on that too. Mwah. So if you're still here and you're still listening, obviously there is some more engagement that you would like to be a part of. Please head over and join the membership. The link is in the show notes. So much love to you.